Hello and welcome to a new podcast episode of Trend Topics and Tech in Nature. My name is Jasmin Spreer. Mark Buckley is an advocate for the SDGs, member of the expert network for the World Economic Forum for Innovation, Climate Change, Agriculture, Food and Beverage, an international climate speaker and much more. I will speak with him together with Lothar Stadler, Chief Commercial Officer of Imhotep.Industries, about the climate crisis, the SDGs and the importance of fresh water. Hello you two. Nice to have you here today.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Hello, Jasmine.
Hello Lothar. So the first question is for Mark. Mark, the third part of the sixth IPCC report was also published recently. Were you surprised by the content?
Absolutely not. So I've been following the IPCC for quite some time. I've been doing this sustainability work for a long time for the United Nations. And it wasn't a surprise. Matter of fact, it was, for me, it was a blessing because finally some hard verbiage and some actual, instead of being so soft-handed in the message, it was much more forceful is probably not the right word, but it came forward that it's urgent. We're in a climate crisis. We need to act, and there's some specific things that we need to do. And so I was really glad to hear that. And I love the optimistic twist in a lot of the executives that it says, and there's still enough time to do it. It's not too late. And that's something I speak about a lot as the misunderstanding most have of the exponential function. That if we get on board and if we have enough actions and movements and critical mass, we can reach that exponential function and do amazing things. We still have 8 years left to go before we reach the Paris Agreement, December 2030.
Yeah. In your opinion, what are the biggest challenges?
Oh, well, the biggest challenge is from humanity to get out of this siloed or linear approach to solving our global grand challenges and our issues around climate. So we think, okay, we have to fix water, or we have to fix food, or we have to fix these. And it's really, those are all complex facets of a system. And so the way to solve human suffering and our global grand challenges is really by addressing all the facets of a complex system. And so in 2018, pretty much all international organizations, World Trade Organization, UN, the European Union, World Economic Forum, they all switched to this systems view of life approach to solving our global grand challenges. And I really think that is the key. Instead of this siloed or expertise method of solving our problems, that we take a real systemic approach and address everything at once. That's how the world works, and it's actually a better model for success.
Meat abstinence was also given an important role. You are part of a sustainable advisory board of a startup, Farms. They are working on cultured steaks directly from cells. How do you assess the importance of cultured food in the future? And what about the high power consumption?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, Aleph Farms is a super startup in the lab-grown meat cellular agriculture space. So, very rudimentary, and in German, I don't like the term in vitro Fleisch as the word, and you think in vitro, what? That kind of sounds scary, but it's really not scary. It's less invasive, and it's also better for our environment and our climate. So they take a non-fetal bovine serum. Absolutely not. They don't do anything that hurts the cow. They take a cell out of the cow that is like plucking a hair from a human being. It's not painful. It's non-invasive, and the cow can still have a long life. And then they grow that in an environment using plant-based organic matter in a lab. And in about 3 weeks, they have a full steak. So a left started out with a thin cut piece of meat and a steak, and then they went to prime rib or ribeye steak, and grown in 3 weeks. It's amazing. The reason alternate proteins and alternate ways of producing meat is good is because it's another facet in this complex system to get off of the unsustainable practice of industrial animal agriculture, where we have these big areas where cows are on these abhorrent conditions, creating methane and manure and hurting our waterways, to a much more controlled area, and the input of food and water to these animals is minuscule. It's reduced. And the great thing I like about Aleph Farms is they are the first to grow a steak in outer space. So they sent twice now food to the ISS space station and grew a steak there. The reason is, yeah, that's a great marketing thing and it sounds wow, cool. That's not the important part. The important part is the resilience. How do we grow or produce food in the harshest environment in the world, in an environment where energy, water is very scarce, where it's really hard to do? Because if we can do it there, then we can have that resilience here on Earth and not affect our environment, our water, our soils, and things in the production of meat. It's not the solution for all. Matter of fact, I would say let's get as far away from animal consumption, meat consumption as possible. But I think it's a great alternative to traditional industrial animal agriculture. That's really a big part. And I'm not sure I answered the other part of your question. If we have time, I'd be glad to.
No, I wanted to ask it again. What about the high power consumption? And in the moment, it's really, really expensive, the whole production. So how could we reduce the prices?
Yeah, exactly. So for Aleph, the price consumption is pretty high. It's still not bad, comparable to like a Wagyu steak and some very specialty meats out there. And the reason is because the medium and the growth and the type of lab-based setup technology that's used to grow it. There's a way to get that cost of goods down, which most people, whether it's vertical farming, whether it's precision fermentation, whether it's fungus or whatever type of alternate protein to grow food, isn't realizing. If you uh, take renewable energies, that means ambient water harvesting, if you take solar power, if you take wind energy, if you take battery backups to produce those products that are very innovative, then you've just reduced your cost of goods sold, which then drives the price down. And so this might be controversial, but the way to look at it is kind of like Tesla. Tesla started out with the Roadster. It was extremely expensive, and now the Model 3 and the Model Y and the models coming are better price points. And that's this diffusion of innovation curve. As we use more renewables, as we find better processes, that price point will come down comparable and even better than that market. Plus the long-term impact, the natural capital or the true cost of that product is a lot less than regular animal agriculture. Regular animal agriculture, let's take beef or hamburgers, has tons, hundreds of thousands of liters of water embedded in one hamburger, and land and food and methane emissions, which cellular agriculture has a much lower, minuscule, lot less. It's not even comparable.
Mm-hmm.
And so the greenhouse gas emissions, the impact on the environment is a total different beast. And so we have to look at it in a different lens. And so I think it's a good one facet. I don't think it's the solution. I think it's an important facet to address the entire food system, this global food system.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. What other trends will gain importance in the food sector in the future? Vertical farming, for example. This is supposed to use less water than traditional agriculture.
Yeah, so vertical farming or aquaculture is really this buzzword. It's goes back to the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Hydroponics, it's been around for a long time. Matter of fact, I come from 5 generations of Germany's largest hydroponic nurseries, hydroponic farming, which is the way it started out 5 generations ago was with lava rocks and water. and what we call a nutrient film technology. And there was no soil involved. And so you have a reduction on soil, you have a reduction on the amount of water you need. Um, that vertical farming is kind of a buzzword because I really think the technology and the things that will really do well are what we call controlled environmental agriculture. That is vertically. So we're using land and space efficiently. We're using renewable energy. We're using, like Lotar's here, we're using the ambient water harvesting, rainwater recycling. We're using desalination. We're using all sorts of innovative methods to reduce the amount of energy and water and inputs that we have to put into those products. And then here's the other caveat, and I mentioned this with Aleph. It builds in resilience into our system. So not only are the energy inputs into that renewable, that means if tomorrow our entire grid were to go away, our electricity grid were to go away, it wouldn't in these processes because they're off the grid, they're renewable, they're done by solar and wind and things that always function. Well, I hope always function in this world. And so that's one. And then it's resilient because people need to eat the very next day. And so they need to have food that very next day. And so this is giving you that resilience, which is great for places in that respect. The last thing that's important that we need to touch upon on this, not only is vertical farming, precision fermentation, all those things fabulous, but we need to get food away as a commodity. Right now in our food systems, food is a commodity. We trade it like stocks, right? And that's really what's going on in the Ukraine now. We're trading food and have been for a long time. And so it's a more of a fight over those commodities, which is a basic resource for many people in the world. And we need to get away from that and realize it's a basic need. It's a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a basic need for us. And we need to get food as a system away from commodities and as in something that we cherish for our health and our wealth and sustenance as humanity.
Hmm. Absolutely. When we are talking about food, we also have to talk about water. And clean water is one of the sustainable development goals, clean water and sanitation. So, in your opinion, where are we with this in the moment?
Yeah, so clean water and sanitation is the sixth sustainable development goal, but all sustainable development goals are tied together as a system. It's virtually impossible to work on one. I can tell you right now that 11 of the sustainable development goals tie very closely towards water. So three of them are very heavy on water, and that's the biosphere area. So life on land, life below water, and clean water and sanitation are the strongest to tie to water. It's really, really important. What most people don't understand is not only are the sustainable development goals the first ever historical moment for humanity when 192 countries came together and agreed on a plan, a roadmap to keep us at 1.5 degrees of warming, but they're the world's first ever moonshot. We have 8 years left to reach the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals by December 2030. And so I really think it's a key factor in that. That's what Lothar and Phantor and Imhotep are doing, is addressing how do we relieve the pressure on humanity, on our infrastructures. And that's the key, sustainable development. We have development going on all over the world, but what part of it is sustainable to give us water security, food security, and things like that? So I really think we need more, ambient water harvesting, rainwater recycling, cloud seeding. We need some big things to really make sure we have water security all over and that we're taking care of every precious drop that there is.
Absolutely. And this is the moment I want to introduce also Lothar in our conversation, because Lothar, you are from Imhotep.Industries. Imhotep.Industries has developed the Phantor. It is designed to harvest drinking water from the air. So could you explain us how it works?
Yes. Well, what we are doing is we're simply copying the nature with technology. In nature, water evaporates, it comes to clouds, it condenses, and then it rains. Well, we are turning this into an industrial process with technology. We cool down the air and condense water comes out. However, until now, this took a lot of energy, yeah, to do this process. We have a new solution by intelligent guiding the cool air in the plant, so the cooled air stays in there, and we do not need so much energy. Yeah, and that's a process. Yeah, and this brings our technology close to other water technologies, also in terms of cost. Yeah, so with the big difference that we do not produce waste, we do not need plastic bottles, yeah, no salt, no salt residues, and well, we provide a self-sufficient solution,
Mm-hmm.
and we see today that self-sufficient solutions are more and more important.
Mm-hmm. But how far along are you with the development of a Phantor? It's already done or just a prototype?
Well, it was a long development from 2019 on, and Phantor was delivered now to Dubai, and it's producing every day on the world islands. It's a hotel island. It's producing every day now drinking water there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but why is your prototype in Dubai? Because isn't water scarcity much greater in other regions? Dubai is really rich.
Yes, well, we chose as a startup, we chose an ideal place where the humidity and the temperature is perfect for our process. That's why it is there. It's all over the year. It's the same temperature and humidity, and it's perfect conditions there. So, and we see also the results at the moment are really good, and we see what they can do with that on an island. You don't have to bring the bottled water there. You don't have to use seawater and process it in a desalination and put back the salt into water into the sea. So this helps in this use case. But there are also, you're right, many other cases. But as a startup, you have to focus somewhere, and this was a very good choice.
Okay, so but after your focus on Dubai, what are the future plans with the Phantom?
Well, as Mark said, we are trying to scaling up, of course, our technology. And like you mentioned, the Tesla case in the beginning, new technologies are expensive, and our water costs at the moment is about 3 to 7 cents per liter, and we think we still can go down with that price. And this makes it also competitive to other technologies. And for example, take it we need the energy, of course. Yeah, we can take it from photovoltaic plants, from windmills, and so on. And when energy, for example, is not needed, that's a big problem for energy service companies. Yeah, but at the same time, you could just place one of our water generators beside a windmill, and at the time you don't need the energy, you just produce your water because you can store it for a time. Yeah, that's a new application.
And how big is the Phantom? So what about land consumption?
Well, the Phantor is in a container size, 40 feet container, so 12 meters long, and it's pretty small for that. What it produces, it can produce up to 10,000 liters per day, pure water. And I myself also tried it. Mark, you should come one day to Dubai and also try the water.
Yeah, I definitely want to. I want to interject something because when I hear Lothar speak about it, this is what I hear. Um, I hear that it's a solution that we're working on, that the price will be more affordable for everyone so that it's a tool that we can implement. But what I really hear is that with climate change, with the climate crisis, our air is hotter. There's more moisture in the air. That's why there's stronger storms. And so it's also a renewable energy that's kind of just free going to waste there. And if we can do, and this could be controversial, could be geoengineering or considered geoengineering. If we start to take that extra moisture, which is creating stronger storms and things out of the air, we might even bring down global warming. Because I mean, global warming, if you believe in climate change, it's getting hotter and there's more heat and moisture in the air, and that's why the storms are more intensive. So this is, for me, a multifaceted solution that has far-reaching intentions. But the other thing that I hear is, yeah, I hear Dubai, it's rich and that. But for me, it's like saying we're going to go to the ISS space station. Where else would you go to test a product that harvests ambient water out there than one of the hottest deserty places in the world, Dubai, and say, if we can do it there, we can pretty much do it anywhere, you know? And that's what I hear when I hear Lothar speak. I know he's pretty humble, but I have great hopes and ambitions for this product.
Thank you, Mark. I think you mentioned a great idea. So you you say we just take the ambient water and capturing, and that helps to contribute climate change. That could be a new climate works case in action. Eh?
Yeah, it is. It could.
Yeah, it could, but I think we have to talk about it a little bit more, because of course there are also a lot of other things to think about if we talk about some possibilities like that. Because of course, like you said, it's controversial, and so we have to talk about it a little bit more. But first of all, Mark, so do you think that such technologies can help solve water scarcity all over the world?
Um, no, I think they can't. I think really it's a facet that it can really help, and it could, depending on the scale. So nothing against Lothar. I think we could have 100,000 Phantors or Lothar Imhotep type of companies out there, and then instead of just tickling the surface of the problem, we would be making a dent in that. And then at that scale, then that's when we could really also talk about it. It is kind of geoengineering, because then we're talking about hundreds of millions or billions of ambient water that we're pulling out of the air. That would be then really truly geoengineering. And if you've read prior IPCC reports, because you brought that up earlier, you would know in the last IPCC report, not this last one that they did, but the one before, I believe it was the AR5, they actually started to suggest different geoengineering things, which I think are absurd. I think that's a slippery slope to go down. The reason I don't think it's so bad with water is because um, as our temperatures rise, as we have these issues with global warming, that's one thing that's a factor that's increasing our problems with our storms getting stronger and things like that. So I actually think that would have a positive effect, instead of spraying aerosol, to keep warming down and things like that. I think that's probably one of the most better geoengineering forms. And so I think it is a great benefit, because it decentralizes it. It makes people self-sufficient. So I like to say off the grid living. So if you had a farm or a business, and you were harvesting rainwater and ambient water, you might be able to supplement your entire water needs. The Phantor produces an enormous amount of water every day. And if you had a few of them, or if there's other technologies, this Lothar doesn't know this, but I personally would. I actually have one. I have a little ambient water harvester. It's bigger than a coffee machine in my home. It harvests the ambient water out of my home in just one room, and it gives me about 5 liters of clean drinking water a day. And I don't have it hooked up to the potable water onto the city. It's just the ambient water in my home. What most people don't understand is that the tap water that comes out, which I live in Hamburg, is very clean. The allowable drinking water that comes out of the tap in Hamburg is 600 parts per million. Allowable different parts and all sorts of things in your water. The ambient water in Hamburg is between 60 and 120 parts per million in the ambient. And in my home, hopefully it's not that bad. It's probably 50 to 60. parts per million. So then when it's like a dehumidifier, if it pulls that moisture out of the air, filters it through a filtration system, it's a lot better water. And if we can put minerals back in or do things like that, boy, that's a lot better than 600 parts or 1,000 parts per million that's allowable in some places of the world. So I think it's a super solution to get people to self-reliance or to get them off these big grids that are failing because they're old, outdated systems that are not up to speed. So I'm sorry to kind of hijack it, but I have a lot of opinions around this, and I really think Lothar has touched, just like Climeworks or others, on a pulse of something that's needed for our world. Water is the new gold for the future.
Mark, you're really mentioning a very, very important aspect here, the self-sufficiency and the grids which are around. So and new applications. When you were talking now about the ambient air in your home, you could even disrupt even the cooling procedures of buildings and so on, and get water out of that. But that's just the beginning. We also were thinking about it, and that's what technology helps us to bring also the world forward.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, what else are some promising approaches to tackle the water problem, Mark? So, it sounds like that there are a lot of more out there.
Oh yeah, there are. So I sit on the Innovation Hub Council for many organizations, but mainly for the World Economic Forum. And what that means, to just be simple, is I only want to see innovations that solve human suffering and our global grand challenges. And some of those innovations are things like $1 eyeglasses or solar sanitation or electricity free refrigeration, something that really addresses billions of people's problems. And I think water is at the very core of those. So I truly believe Phantor, and Phantor's received numerous awards and recognition through NEOM and Phantor already, because others around the world are saying, wow, this is really a problem solving innovation that really is self-sustaining off the grid. You could take this to a refugee camp where they don't have running water, they don't have an infrastructure, and you could give them clean drinking water, which is a huge thing, especially during a pandemic that people need so that they can get back to health, so that they can avoid issues. So there's so many areas where it really can be good. And the footprint of it is, it doesn't take up land consumption. It's not a big footprint or carbon footprint in that aspect, so that it's not something that you'd say, boy, that's like eating meat, or that's like doing, something else that has a big carbon footprint. This is very, very non-existent, and it's a positive. And it, instead of, there's this big trend in the world, let's go net zero. Let's get our emissions to net zero. I think that's the wrong thing. If we go net zero, that means we're dead. That means we're flatlining. We are carbon beings. We need carbon and nitrogen and that and methane. It's not methane, but the manure in our soils to have good soil health, to do that. And so if we go net zero, that means like we're almost dead, like flatlining as humanity. I think we need to go net positive. We need to capture greenhouse gas emissions and carbon and use it for our benefit and leave the world better than we found it. So, and that's that, Phantor's an innovation, but there's many out there that increase vertically or give us back more land, regenerate, restore our soils, our land, our water, and leave it better than we found it, instead of doing this cradle to grave model. We just get something, we use it, and we throw it away. It's a one-way system that is on a planet. There is no throwaway. On Earth, there is no place to throw away. We have to keep that in a cycle that's continually moving. And I think this is a super solution. That's the way I look at it.
Of course, of course. Yeah, but could you also tell us some other examples next to Fanta?
Yeah. So, like the ones that I mentioned are $1 eyeglasses, solar sanitation, electricity-free refrigeration. Coolar is one of them. The one that I really like, and it's more of a health innovation, is around the world in Africa and India, there's a lot of women who are really waiting in line or waiting months to get a breast exam. And it's not breast cancer that kills, it's the late detection that really hurts and causes the problem. So there's this new innovation, it's called iBreast Exam. It's a handheld $5 unit. It looks like a mouse. It looks like kind of a mouse, a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier. But women can take that iBreast exam and they can put it over their blouse, over their shirt. They don't have to take anything off. They don't have to do some crazy squeezing. And they just run that over their shirt, and it's fine enough to detect lumps and issues that is a low-cost entry, so insurance and waiting times and all that. And then if they find something, it gives them a report. It gives them, it says where and what size, and then they can take that to their doctor because there's all sorts of factors in there, and that affects billions of people. Another innovation is, so if people ask me what are the top 5 ways to draw down global warming to heal our planet, I can tell them. Most people are like, I have no idea. We need to stop using plastic, or let's go vegan, or whatever. No, that's not it. The number one way is to globally reform our entire food system so that it's not a commodity anymore, and that it's not about the products or the brands of the future. If we're vegan, or if we're flexitarian, or if we're raw or paleo, it's about the way we produce that will have the biggest effect on the future. If we use renewable energy, if we use ambient water harvesting, rainwater recycling, if we use good packaging, if we do it without waste, this just during the pandemic, 50% of every food product that we produce, 50% worldwide, globally, is wasted. Not even a quarter of that 50% waste is enough to feed everybody starving on the planet 6 times over. And if we fix that and quit going over and using resources that we don't have on a finite planet, that's the biggest thing. And the second and third is surprising to most people. Way to draw down our planet is really to empower women and girls. And most people, what? Empower women and girls? That's weird. From an old hippie bearded guy saying that, that's kind of weird. What do you mean? Well, what I mean is the largest producers, farmers of food, seafood, are women and girls. They don't get to go to school because they work in abhorrent conditions producing food for others around the world. They don't have microcredits. They don't have an identification. They're starving and almost starving themselves because they're producing the food of our world. And if we empower them, they will feed not only their families better, but they'll feed the world better. And they're better sustainable stewards of our planet. And that has, and I'll tell you, and I'm not just the only one to say it, there's tons of reports out there. The best one I like is from Paul Hawken in his book, Drawdown. But he says up to 75% by empowering women and girls, it can draw down global warming. That's the hugest impact. And then I'll just give you 4. I won't give you 5. The fourth way to draw down global warming is by rethinking refrigeration. And I hope that Lothar will think of this as the next step, because he kind of mentioned it at home. If we think about the way we refrigerate our products, and when we think about that, we think about the fridge in our home, but we don't think about the cooled shipping containers that are in the billions going around the world that have these refrigeration devices that are spewing heat out the back end and heating our planet. We don't think about those trucks that are delivering food to the grocery store around the world that are spewing heat out of the back end of those cooling devices. And that's all attributing to not just hydrofluorocarbons, but it's contributing towards the heating of our planet. And so if we think of better ways to cool down our planet and our food and things like that, and that's why one of the innovations I said is electricity-free refrigeration, and it's mainly was thought for vaccines in very hot areas so that they would work. But those are solutions that are just enormous impact to bring our planet back into the safe operating spaces of our planetary boundaries.
Mhm. So, Lothar, this is bringing me to the last question for you. What are the next plans for Phantor and Imhotep Industries? Are you now getting some ideas to tackle on?
That's always the hard questions to answer to journalists when you want to hide something. But yes, we definitely have something in our garage, and it's growing, and we will present it in June at the Green Tech Festival in Berlin. It's 22nd to 24th June in Berlin. So probably you also pass by, Mark and Jasmine, and we'll present our Phantor, the smallest brother or sister of Phantor, with the same technology, but in a smaller size. And that's how we try to convince people also to get into new technologies. Yeah. And that's a new thing, and we're very happy to announce that as soon as possible.
Okay, sounds good. I'm curious to see it. And also, one last question for you, Mark, of course, about the SDGs. In your opinion, is it at all realistic to achieve the SDGs by 2030? Is there hope?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I'll tell
Okay.
you why. There's a couple of examples out there already. It's absolutely positive. And I'm sorry my answers are never short because life is complex. We're full of systems. So I need to give you the full version so you can understand it. When John F. Kennedy said we're going to put men on the moon, he had 10 years to do it. He went before Congress and asked for money. He didn't have any innovations, technologies, anybody working on how they were going to do that. But he was asking for millions of and probably billions of dollars to make that happen. That was a vision that he set there, and he achieved it in 9 years. So he less than a decade, he achieved that, or the U.S. did, and other countries involved. We're at that same point in time now. We have 8 years left to go. We had 15 had we had started in 2015. We have 8 years left to go. And we do have the technologies, we do have the critical mass. And if we get enough people applying these models, the SDGs and environmental social governance, into their lives, to their organizations, and implementing them, I know the exponential function works and we can reach it in 8 years. I'm very hopeful and optimistic that we can probably even do better if we get everybody on board. Here's the great thing about it. It's a better model for not just for life. It gives you a beautiful future to live in, or at least a lot better than if we didn't do anything. And then the second thing, it's a better model for business. So it works better, it functions better because it involves that exponential function. So I know that people who do it during economic downturn of 2020 from during the pandemic, they all outperformed those sustainable companies, those ESG companies outperform their conventional counterparts, those who are doing business as usual. They all outperform them because it's a better model for life. It's a better model for humanity. And it just is so much fun to do it. So I know it's positive. We can do it, and it's positive, and I'm optimistic.
In my opinion, these are the best last words we could have. So I really hope that it will be like that. Like you said, Mark and Lothar, thank you very much for the conversation today. It was really interesting, and I'm really curious to see what happens next with everything out there.
Thank you,
Thank you
Jasmine.
so much. It was wonderful, Jasmine.
Thank you. So, thank you for the talk, and till now, goodbye.